Hey, 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 welcome to the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion. In this content piece, we are shifting to the next subject topic where over the next 5 content pieces, we will quote unquote address some legal terms. As I have mentioned to you before, if you have followed us, we will rotate through topics with finances, legal terms, appraisals, real estate process, urban planning, and the home structure. So that when we rotate through, there's lots of information and you can start to put some of the pieces together. So let's get right to it today to uncover how you as a homeowner, yes, you will become a homeowner, how you will hold title to your property. And I have to say, this really frosts me. Now, why? Well, because it happens so nonchalantly. And I have to say, this too has financial repercussions and it's barely even discussed. All right, today we are unwrapping the term joint tenants and the pros and cons. Now, this is a widely held category for people buying property, and we are just starting the terms of property ownership. So in the next content piece where we discuss tenants in the entirety and then tenants in common, we will compare them so you're getting more than what Dr. Internet gives you. Caveat here, huge caveat. I'm not a lawyer, and any document for holding property, lawyers need to be consulted. They're the professionals that will do this correctly. However, you must understand your options. So this is on you to figure out and what you want to choose, and then fine-tune it with a professional. The technical definition of joint tenants or joint tenancy means that 2 or more people own the property together and own the property equally, usually 50-50, if there are 2 people. However, let's say there are 3, then it would be 33.3%, right? Joint tenancy allows for the right of survivorship. So when one person passes away, it automatically goes to the one person or the remaining 2 people in the example. The deed will also say joint tenancy with the right of survivorship, but it's already there by definition. Now, with this situation, all co-owners must take ownership at the same time, and they have undivided interest to enjoy the property. All co-owners own the shares equally, and one co-owner that survives will end up owning the entire property. Now, I hate to bring this up, but I think it's important to talk about marriage, divorce, and death. These are just milestones that need to be talked about in black and white. And I think I read someplace that no one ever thinks about divorce when they're getting married, right? And I know I didn't. And the truth is, according to a study completed by Bowling Green State University, and I'm quoting, after reaching a 40-year low for 2 years of 2020 and 2021, with the divorce statistics, 14.0 per thousand married women. The divorce rate was slightly higher with 14.56 in 2021. It is down from the peak of 1979 when it was 22.6. But nonetheless, in 2021, there were 948,862 women that reported divorce. And in 2022, there were 989,518 divorces. Now that's almost 1 million people annually. Now, not just to harp on marriage, but what about a widow remarrying and a widow remarrying with children? Second marriages have even worse statistic rates. Now you can go and do your own research about this. This is not a content piece on divorce or marriage, but it is what to do with an asset once people have decided not to live under the same roof. Now, most transactions I've been involved with end up in joint tenancy with right of survivorship, no matter if it's a heterosexual relationship or not. So it's a widely used form of ownership. And just as everything, the pros of joint tenancy is that it makes it super simple if something happens to a spouse. The other spouse will get the house. Or just the other owner is if you don't have to be married. So often people think that's a criteria, but it's not. Now, this ownership avoids probate court, and that can save time and money. Another pro is it's just easy, and it provides peace of mind to their surviving owners, especially at a time of grief. They say when someone passes, it's best not to do anything for a year. At least that's what the therapists tell me. There is no requirement, as I said, for being married. It seems like a straightforward, inexpensive, and simple way to share ownership of property. Now you are getting to know me, and I do love examples. So say there are 4 brothers that are buying a vacation house. That property can be held as joint tenants. And joint tenants, they will hold the property equal. If there are 4 of you, you must all own a quarter of the property. A pro is that if you're buying this property together, you can pool your money and you can divide the carrying costs like insurance and property taxes. With the most important characteristic of joint tenancy and the right of survivorship, this will mean that if one of the joint tenants dies, the entire joint tenancy remains in the hands of their surviving joint tenants. For this reason, a joint tenant can't leave his share to his heirs like a son or a daughter, unless it's the only surviving joint tenant, which in that case he becomes a sole owner of the property. Now, all joint tenants have the right to use and enjoy the property, but not exclusively. And one joint tenant cannot do anything to interfere with the other's rights. This is hunky-dory if everyone gets along. But I don't know any family that doesn't have some conflict. So let's talk about the cons. Because like most things in life, there's disadvantages. They include control issues. Since every owner has a co-equal share of the asset, any decision must be mutual. Think maintenance bills, heating, landscaping. Houses have to be maintained and it costs money. You may not be able to sell or mortgage a home if your co-owner does not agree. There are tax implications with joint tenancy, and it varies on whether the owners of the property are married or not. If you have purchased a home with your spouse in a joint tenant arrangement, you might face capital gains taxes if you sell the home after your spouse dies. How much you pay in capital gains might be reduced. The same thing with a family house too. For most survivorship arrangements, you will see that estate taxes are generally applied, meaning the survivor who gets the portion of the property will have to pay taxes on the value of that portion, or the estate pays the taxes on the value of that portion. This is true for right of survivorship arrangements as well. However, right now, the IRS allows a married couple $500,000 of profit. Now, this is not the sales price, it's profit. Your cost basis plus all your improvements subtracted by the effective sales price, meaning the fees deducted from the price. But that's not the case for family homes. If one person wants out, the entire group is affected. Now, using a married couple or even a family vacation house, let's take some examples. A joint tenant can prevent a forced sale in court or divide the property. However, it's more likely that a group would agree to resolve the situation, like dissolve the joint tenancy and reform the group. Now, too, a joint tenant can transfer out of the ownership, but that action will terminate joint tenancy and the new owner will join as a tenancy in common, which gets complicated and you need a lawyer. By entering into a joint tenancy agreement, you lose some control over your property. All joint tenants have equal shares, remember? And the property, meaning any tenant can sell, rent, or encumber the property without the consent of the other joint tenants. Joint tenancy does not protect the property from claims of the joint tenant's creditors. If one joint tenant has significant debts, creditors may seek to attach to the property, potentially putting the other tenants at risk. I've had this happen several times where people were involved in a lawsuit and the creditors attached to the property, affecting both of the joint tenants. Joint tenancy offers limited flexibility when it comes to distributing assets after your death. The property must pass to the surviving joint tenants regardless of your wishes or any provisions in your will. So in our example, let's say one brother cannot give his portion of the vacation house to his children. His portion goes to the other 3 brothers. Does that make sense? Now let's address an elephant in the room, divorce. This scenario, again, when you own property as a joint tenant, maybe I'm wrong, but divorce is not really a super happy time. It's not easy, especially if you have kids. So what would happen if you held a property as joint tenants and then you dissolve your marriage? What happens with joint tenancy if one owner wants to sell, but the other does not? So let's talk about Jeff and Susie. Before the divorce, both Jeff and Susie have the right to enjoy the property fully. But suppose they're at an impasse as to whether or not to sell. They may need to involve their attorneys and the court to resolve the situation, which is expensive and stressful. So what happens if one owner wants their share to go to a third person? Suppose Susie and Jeff are on the verge of a nice divorce, as nice as it can be, and Jeff wants his share of the home to go to his brother. So let's say Jeff and Susie are still married, but the marriage is on shaky ground. Susie is very involved in her career and showing little interest in the children. And Jeff would like to convey his joint tenancy interest in the home to his brother. Jeff's brother and sister-in-law are the children's guardians, and he wants to ensure that his brother can keep his share of the home if something should happen to him. If Jeff gives his share of the house to his brother, the joint tenancy would be converted to a tenancy in common. If Jeff died, his brother and Susie would have an undivided right to occupy and enjoy the property, but there would be no rights of survivorship because it's a tenancy in common holding. If either Susie or Jeff's brother died, then their interest in the home would pass according to the terms of their will, or if there were no will, to the heirs according to the state's intestate law. In many states, conveyance such as this could be made by a tenant unilaterally. Jeff could gift his portion of the interest of the home to his brother without notifying Susie. Jeff could even convey the joint tenancy interest to himself and severing the joint tenancy and creating a tenancy in common. The law is not consistent in every state, and conveyance must be recorded in the county recorder's office to be effective. State law must be consulted before attempting to sever joint tenancy to ensure that all applicable legal requirements are met. So you need a lawyer. So let's say if Jeff and Susie and Jeff's brother all owned the home as joint tenants with the right of survivorship. In some states, this would create a last person standing situation, which the last surviving tenant will receive the entire interest of the property. In other states, if one owner attempted to create a tenancy in common by conveying their interests to themselves, only their interest would be converted to a tenancy in common, not the whole thing. The remaining joint tenants would continue to own the other two shares in the home as joint tenants with the right of survivorship. Now, what happens if one owner wants a property to go to their children instead of a second spouse? Suppose Susie and Jeff have divorced and Susie has remarried, and Susie has purchased a new home with her husband. She and her new husband own a home with joint tenants with the right of survivorship. Susie may want to leave her joint tenancy rights to her children instead of her new spouse. Therefore, joint tenancy may not be the best solution. A tenancy in common may be a better option for her. What happens if joint tenants are not married and disagree? Suppose it's a family vacation house and the joint tenants are not married, right? If there's a conflict, they may need to go and ask a judge to partition the property, and the judge can't divide the land and one building into equal shares. This would be impossible. So the judge may order that the property be sold and the proceeds of the sale be split between the joint tenants, and then you may have tax issues. It gets all so complicated when you're shopping for a house and all the other decisions you're making. This is an easy one to decide on how you will hold property before you start house hunting. Now be sure to check in on our next content piece for tenants in the entirety. If you are new here, we invite you to take our Homebuying Chaos Unwrapped class, and you can access that through the First Time Homebuyer Workshop.com. Until next time, from the team at the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion, bye for now.